Hi there, welcome to my channel. In this video I'll be showing you how to create fluid art. It's a lovely technique which creates colourful and beautiful marble-like finishes with acrylic paints and a few other mediums too. I'll show you my technique and some steps of achieving it. It's a fun process which creates amazing results. These are the acrylic paints I use. On the right side are heavy body paints which are thick and more for textured work. These are usually more pigmented and richer in colour. The left side are fluid acrylics which are more liquid. Both work great and these ones are from the dollar store. You can use most acrylic paints, however thicker paints do need to be thinned out a little bit more. This is golden GAC 800 which is added to the paint, and this is a key ingredient to the pour. If I just use paint on its own, once dry it will have cracks and crevices which is called crazing. Adding this or pouring medium allows the fluid art to dry with a smooth and even finish. This is a little pricey, so I have seen people use PVA glue to experiment and play with too. I also use water to thin out the paint to the right consistency. For setup, as this is a pretty messy project, I have a table cover for my surface, plastic cups for mixing my paint and some spoons to stir, and some latex gloves. Now for surfaces to pour onto, here I have a circle cake board, a canvas board or canvases are fine too. I have a block of wood that I've used in the past which has worked great, and a solid birchwood panel which is from an art store. As long as you have a smooth surface to work on, it would work great. I would suggest working on a smaller scale as larger pieces can be quite tricky. So given some of the basics of how to start, I'm going to show you how I mix my paint. Fluid art often has beautiful cell and lace-like finishes to the design, and you can do this by adding a few lubricants which react with the paint once torched. This is a lovely effect, and to do this I use various ingredients. Here I have a hair serum which contains dimethicone. This is a great cell creator. Look out for this ingredient in hair products, it will definitely be useful. Silicone is also another ingredient that makes cells, and this is really useful. I think most artists use this the most. And another one is alcohol, and I add a little bit of this to the mix too. To create my cell mix, I spray some silicone into a cup. I won't use all of it, but any leftovers can be used for later projects. I add some alcohol and a few pumps of the serum too, and then I use my pipette to stir it. So these are the colours I'm going to be using for this pour. So this is kind of the breakdown of how I make each colour. A lot of it is just judgment, I don't measure, but this is more or less the ratio. So I'm showing you how to make the white paint, and I'm using the heavy body, but I'm also going to add some regular white which is thinner, and you can mix and match, it's not a big deal. I mix this thoroughly, and that's really key in this. Once it's smooth, I then use a pipette and I add in my silicone mix, and I'm adding about 2 of these into the mix, and again I start to mix and mix thoroughly. I then add in my GAC, and I'm adding almost the same amount to the paint, and I give this a good stir and really hit the corners and mix it as thoroughly as I can. And as you can see, it has thinned out my mixture a lot, but not enough. So I then add a tiny touch of water, and the key is to get it to a thin custard consistency. You'll know when it's ready when you try to drip it from your spoon and you get a consistent stream of paint, and that's when it's ready. You don't want it to be too thick or too thin, and that's the tricky part. Here I'm making another colour, and I've used a few here. I've used black, brown and gold, and I'm adding in the GAC again, and I'm going to give it a stir. The key is stirring, and you're going to be stirring quite a lot. You don't want any kind of lumps in there, and you want the mixture to be smooth. A small tip I learned was the paint is ready when it runs off the spoon in a steady stream into the cup, and that's the kind of consistency you want. Now I want to show an example of where I messed up on one of my paints. After adding my paint to the cup, I added my silicone and I forgot to mix and smooth this out, and that's very important. So I added my GAC and then it ended up being lumpy as I was mixing it, and the lumps would just not go away. And in order to salvage this, I then had to go back and add some more paint to the mixture, and this would help thicken. So as you can see, it's quite lumpy. It's just not smooth at all, and this is really important. You need a smooth mixture. So I added more paint into it, and then I gave it a good stir and mix for a little while, and that helped salvage my paint and helped it get back to a smooth consistency. I have a set order for making my paints, and this works for me, and it's all about experimentation and learning what's good for you. I like to add my paint first, silicone, then the GAC third, and then water last. I add water last because it's purely there to water down my paint to a pouring consistency. I find that GAC thins out my paint enough that I only need a little bit of water in the final stage. So I find that having a set order really helps. Now that I have my paints ready, I'm going to create a dirty pour, which is a cup filled with various coloured paint, and they're all layered together. Here you can play with the combination and different quantities. You can pour from higher up so that the paint falls into the cup with more weight and pressure, creating ripples, or you can do it closer to the surface. Mix and match your colours, there's no right or wrong ways to pour. I would suggest being bold with your colours. They give the best and most unique results. This is one of my favorite parts of doing a dirty pour, because you actually see the silicone mix come into work, and you'll start to see cells and some reactions going on in the paint as you pour. I continue to layer the paint into the cup, and as you can see, there are some effects and marbling going on already. You can see some cells appearing also, and this is purely the reaction between the paint and the silicone mixture. It's really nice to watch and see this kind of come alive. The next step is completely optional. I use the end of a spoon and just give it one swirl into the cup, which helps give it another effect when I pour it. So my mixture is ready, and I do have a lot of leftover paint which I'm just going to set aside. I'm putting 3 cups on my surface and using a wooden board that I have. This is actually a little cutting board, and I did an earlier project on this and I found the colours to be too light. So I'm going to reuse this again and do another pour over the top. So I have my gloves on, and this is going to be the messy part. I have a torch gun, and this is what's going to help release all the cells and lacing effects on the surface once I've poured. I have my dirty pour cup ready, and I flip my board over the cup, carefully flipping it back. And now the cup is sitting neatly on top with the paint contents inside, and I'm just letting this sit for a minute or two. I then lift the cup up and release all the paint, and it's just spreading, and this is the fun part. I love this part. It just gradually spreads by itself, and I'm still kind of getting all the last remnants of the paint out of the cup too. As you can see, there are cells appearing on the surface, and this is very natural because of all the ingredients that we've added. It's already starting to fall over the edges, which is completely fine too, but as you can see in the close-ups, we can see some reactions. To further quicken this, I start to use a torch over the surface and very lightly use it, not touching the paint directly, but just a few inches above, and this creates a reaction and creates the cells and lacing, which is really lovely to watch. Once I've torched it, I very gently move the paint to cover the entire surface so it falls over the sides. The cells and lacing actually stretch out and become a little bigger and more defined in the process. Here you can pour off areas you don't like or move the nicer things around a little. However, it's really hard to figure this part out. You end up losing some really nice areas as well, so you have to be quite careful during this process. Once I'm happy with the final look, I give it another quick torch over the surface to release any more cells that might be there. I also add some paint from the drippings to the sides that didn't get covered. And this is the close-up of the final piece. Initially I was skeptical of the colours and the combination, but it's turned out really well, and the cells and the layering of colours is really lovely. I find you can use the same colours and you'll get a totally different pour on the next round, and that's the beauty of this art. No one piece is ever going to be the same. I will leave this for about 24 hours to fully dry, and you'll find that the colours will darken just a touch after drying, but just leave it untouched and give it good time. Any remnant paints that I have left, I just seal them up and I can use them for the next pour. And this is the dried piece, and I had left this overnight, and this is how it looks. It's dried really nicely, really smooth, and the smoothness is from mixing, and you have to have mixtures that are completely smooth consistently. Well, that's it for this video. I'm sorry I talked a lot in it. This is one of my favorite pieces of art to do. I love doing this kind of project, and I hope that you found it helpful. I know it's a lot of information, but please let me know what you think. Have a go at it yourself, and thank you so much for watching.